I bought this car to flip and make a big profit. It's a 2014 Mazda 6 that could sell for over £3,500 once it's fixed, and I only paid £850. Too good to be true? It was this cheap because although the seller says it's an easy fix, the engine doesn't run. Apparently because of a faulty starter motor. Now the first thing I would usually do is try and bump start it, but seeing as though I've got no friends, I'm stuck with this guy. So the first thing to do is replace that and see if this engine runs. To do that, I had to jack the car up so that I can get access from underneath the car, and then on the top of the engine bay, removing all these induction pipes, air filters, air boxes, that sort of stuff. And I disconnected the wires from the battery so that when I'm plugging in the new starter motor, I don't get any shocks or cause any electrical issues. This pipe off the intercooler had to come out of the way, and after a few more nuts and bolts to get it completely out, it's onto the EGR. So I removed the plug and these 4 bolts on the EGR valve, then got rid of this pipe, and I finally had access to the starter motor, but it was such a struggle getting this located under the car.
Subscribe so I can get a ramp and a unit.
But anyway, it was time to tighten up all these bolts and torque them up, holding the starter motor on. Then connect all the electrical connections, and just a case now of putting back everything that I removed and hopefully listening to this Sky Active Technology engine purr. And if you're interested in my car flipping journey, my profits and my losses, check out this video by Flipping University where we sat down for an hour and spoke about only flipping cars. He's killing the game at the moment with his car flipping videos, and we both got really in deep on how to flip cars and make money yourself. So go and check out his channel. But back to this Mazda, I reconnected the battery, and after testing it with a multimeter, it definitely had enough charge, so on to pressing this start button. And with that done, let's see if it starts. Set power to off, it says. Let's see if this car starts. Try again. It's just clicking. But all hope's not lost yet, because after some searching, I saw this starter fuse that was blown. So onto eBay, I ordered a replacement, but I bought the wrong thing. So I had to buy another one, this time the correct one, and see if I can fit it. But I'm gonna try and use the fuse from the wrong positive battery terminal fuse block, and that way if it blows, because there's a short circuit somewhere, I've still got the correct one. And it's a pretty simple solution, just attaching one jumper cable to the positive battery terminal, passing this electricity through the incorrect fuse block, and then back onto the car below the broken fuse. This just means if it does blow the fuse, I don't have to sit and wait for another one to be delivered. I can fix whatever short circuit it is and then use the correct one. Let's see if it starts with that bridged. Out of gear. Oh, I had a bit of a clunk then. So I know this is a bad idea, but I'm a bit scared. I'm going to try and bridge the fuse for the starter that's blown. Alright, let's give that a go. And it was about here when I started to fear the worst and think about a seized engine that I should have checked way earlier on. Still just a click. So I don't think it was the starter that's broken, to be honest. The jump cable got really melted, really hot. So I'm a little bit worried, but the first thing I'm gonna rule out is if the engine is seized. So I'm gonna take off this little arch liner so I can get to the crank pulley, give this a turn clockwise, and hopefully it turns freely. Come on, fingers crossed. Oh, Jesus. Oh dear. This pulley is not moving at all. I think, boys, I've bought a car with a seized engine. Fuck. Well, that's the end of this video. I was prepared to lose a load of money on this car, not be able to have a good video, and not have enough money to flip a car for a while. At least that's what I thought. So I thought checking if the engine turns would just be one of those things, get it out of the way with. But it looks like this engine isn't turning at all. I've no idea why. I can't afford to rebuild the engine, but I'm going to sell it on Facebook Marketplace, this time listing it as a seized engine, because the previous owner, he definitely knew, and he just wanted to get some money out of it instead of scrapping it. But selling this car actually went a lot better than expected. I contacted a few breakers yards, which ended up in me selling it to one of them for £700. So with an overall loss of, I've forgotten. It's a small price to pay for a very good life lesson. Never trust a car seller, even if they seem honest, because you never know. And if you can't see the car running, you do want to make sure that the car cranks over. And if you can't see that, then ask the seller if you can turn the engine over by hand. And if they say no, expect engine gone boom boom. And as soon as the scrap Mazda had gone, I bought this absolute bargain for just 250 quid. Meet Kermit, the 2012 1.2 Vauxhall Corsa. Now I'm sure you're thinking, at least the engine's not seized, right? Well, did I take my own advice and check it before I bought it? Nope. But I love money, and fully fixed, this car should sell for about £2,000. Lots of profit for me. Now there is a few things wrong with it, obviously. The bonnet needs replacing, this wing could do with replacing, it needs a bloody good clean, and the car doesn't start. And I think the head gasket is gone, so I'm going to need to take the head of the engine off the car. But I'm going to try and get this car started. So now's a good time to test out this top-on jump starter that I've been sent. And that's because I'm hoping that the car's not turning over because the battery's completely dead. So after connecting this up, I'm really hoping that the engine either turns over or, even better, starts. So the previous owner said the car ran out of coolant and then overheated, and he hasn't driven it since. So I'm going to top up the coolant with water and then crank it over. This is pretty scary because if this doesn't turn over, I may have bought another seized engine. You reckon, Billy? The enthusiasm. Come on. Oh, it turns! So although it didn't start, the engine is turning over, so it is not a seized engine, which means one way or another we can get this engine back and running again. I am absolutely buzzing. And after trying to get it started again, oh, she's firing. We'll start saying this. Is it? Smells a bit like petrol.
Yeah, why the f is that smoking?
Smell it, it smells like petrol. Oh,
that does smell like petrol. I reckon that it must be leaking into the coolant system.
I think what's happened is the head ran out of coolant, so it got so hot it warped, meaning the head gasket couldn't seal the cylinder and the coolant jacket. So to be fair to Top Don, it turned over the engine loads of times, and I didn't charge it up, I just used it as it came on 75%, so seems like a pretty good product if you ask me. I'll leave the link to it in the description. They've got loads of different ones to choose from. Even a 10% off discount, and now these things have got me out of trouble so many times now. You definitely should pick one of these up if you're ever worried about your car's battery dying. But it's time to jack this car up so we can get underneath, drain the oil and the coolant, and begin moving everything that's connected to the head of this engine. Just like before, this means getting rid of all the air boxes, air intake tubes, and then moving on to the coil packs. Now you may be wondering, tell me where does he find these cars to flip? Well, I used to spend every waking hour scrolling through eBay and Facebook looking for a new car that's been listed that was cheap and ready to flip. But then I found out about Marketplace Monitor, which you can put in search criteria and get a notification every time a new, well for me, car is listed on Facebook. So for example, I put in spares and repairs under £600 within a certain mile radius. And this means I can spend more time doing what I want to do instead of constantly scrolling through Facebook hoping I catch the next cheap deal. Now this is so important because there's so many cars that are fantastic to flip because they're listed cheap, but as soon as they're put up, someone's going to visit them within 10 minutes, so you need to be the first person to see it, and that's what happened with this Vauxhall Corsa. Now there was a free trial which you can join using this link, and if that runs out, trust me, if you use this to find one good cheap car, that'll pay for an entire year of membership, so it's well worth trying it. Cam position sensors officially off, guys, literally. Put back onto getting this head off the car. So we moved on to the wires and all of the coolant pipes, getting those off and then cracking off all the rocker cover bolts. That is teasing that off. That's not how a gasket should be. Surprised that wasn't leaking, Jesus. Next was onto some incredibly tight engine mount bolts, and this is because the engine mount is attached to the head of the engine, not the block.
Did your back crack then?
Yeah. And then something else cracked.
Yeah, I thought I was f***ing up then.
Oh no.
Yep, I managed to snap one of these enormous engine mount bolts. I managed to get the second one out fine. Well, it did take some of the threads out with it. But that's a problem for later. But I chiselled off the old threads and then got on to removing the rest of the engine mount.
Oh Josh, can you take rocker covers off?
And engine mounts.
Engine mounts.
Look at the state of these manifold bolts. Which was our next big problem, and I pretty quickly decided that I'd leave the exhaust manifold on the head. So I got on to taking the other side of the exhaust manifold off, so it'd come off with the head all in one piece.
Oh no. Oh no.
Then after another snapped bolt on this nightmare of a car, the rest needed chiseling off because as soon as I put a socket on, they just turned round. Then I could pry off the rest of the exhaust from the manifold and it should all come out as one piece.
Yeah.
That's the 5th bolt we've snapped, I think. Bolt snap number 5.
It's not good.
That happened on the coolant outlet flange just before we all lost our minds.
He's going up.
But we did get it off, even though it's going to be a problem later on in the video. But it was time to have a sleep and come back the next day. So despite it being about -6, it's about to rain in about an hour, I've snapped 5 bolt and I don't really know what I'm doing. Despite all that, we're making good progress. Now that I've got the intake manifold off, it's all engine mount side. So I'm going to leave the exhaust manifold on because it's rusted to fuck and I think I'm going to have to grind them off. So I just had to get on with it. I removed the wheel on that side so that I had more access to all of the belts, pulleys, etc. And this is the bolt that was difficult to get to from the top on the engine mount bracket. But now that's out of the way, I'm going to loosen off all the pulley bolts just whilst it's tight. That way I won't be turning the pulleys. You've got the tension of the belt to stop everything turning around. So I completely forgot, but I bought a timing kit for the car. It looks a bit like a bolt you put inside the block and that holds the crankshaft in the exact same position. So after I've taken the head off, the crank is in the exact same position as when I took it off. Crank the engine over whilst trying to push in that bolt, because there'll be a point where you turn it and then it goes in all the way and that's where it'll hold the crank. And now that's done, now I can get on to taking the pulleys off. But now this bracket and pulley are sort of stuck in between each other, so I'll leave that for now and it's time to take off the power steering pump. So I need to take off the lines going to it, and this is because it's bolted through the timing chain cover, which I need to remove to get the chain off between the crank pulley and the cam pulleys. I think I figured it out, boys. Yes! We're off. There we go.
Come on.
All that's left now is the alternator, and then I can get the timing chain cover off. Then I should be able to get the timing chain and the head off. So it's not that much, so fingers crossed get it done in the next hour, hour and a half before it goes dark. So after pushing the alternator out the way so it's not blocking the timing chain cover, I undid the around 30 bolts and managed to pry it off. There was a really tricky coolant pipe attached, but that's off as well. And these pieces I found on the floor when I took the timing chain cover off. I don't know what they're from. I don't know where this bolt went. I don't know where the other bolt from this is. I'm going to try and get this last chain tensioner off, and then I should be able to just undo the head bolts and get the head off, which was pretty easy after hammering the bit onto the bolt. And then I removed the rocker cover, which was just there to stop dust getting in, anything like that. Undid all of these head bolts, and it was finally time to remove the gasket and take the head out the car. Oh, we have got it off. Thank God for that. But I have just seen something very worrying. That's a lot of water. That's not good at all. At least my piston rings are sealing. Right, I'm going to clean that up and see what it looks like. But if you like this video, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification so you'll be notified when the next episode of this flip is up and you can see how much money we made.